be the same 5 years from now as you are today, except for the books that you read and the people that you meet. And there's nobody better to meet than our next guest, which is 20, I guess, John, coming up on 25 years with this particular person. And, you know, the person I'm going to introduce has helped hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, change their financial future, change their financial situation. And the day we live in right now, there's a lot of people that are struggling financially. You know, we're talking about this COVID-19 and people being at home. Well, you know, it's one thing if you're at home and you're financially secure. It's another thing if you're not. And, you know, we're very, very fortunate to be able to share some information here with some people with my good friend. But my good friend, Mr. John Solleder, is going to share some information with you. John and I, John allowed me the privilege of co-authoring a book with him, which became the #1 bestseller on Amazon, the business book in 2020. So, you know, John, I know you have some things you want to share with people today.
Well, I do, Keith, and thank you everybody. And normally I act as MC on this with Keith, but Alberto said, hey, you know, you need to talk a little bit more. So if you like this, thank Alberto. If you don't like this, thank Alberto. But here's a couple of things. Your attitude, not your aptitude, is going to determine your altitude. Now, Zig Ziglar said that, you know, many years ago, and you know, think about that for a minute. So just make a couple of notes about attitude. I'm only going to cover two things very quickly. We got another great speaker after this that you're going to want to definitely hear. You got a couple of them coming up here. But your attitude, not your aptitudes. In other words, it's not what you know, it's how you feel about what you know. You know, one of my mentors many years ago always said, you know, people, and Jim just said it in his speech, people feel what you're saying more than listen to what you're saying. So here's a little exercise for you, okay? Attitude. I was sitting in the back of the room at a meeting in Toronto a number of years ago, and I doodle sometimes before I'm going to speak, sometimes just out of nervousness or I'm trying to focus or whatever. And I was sitting there and I was doodling. And the word attitude is something that Foster Owusu had asked me to talk about that day. And I said, you know, let's just see what happens. Go back to that slide for a second, D. The attitude one, please. Okay. So the word attitude, if you take it and you spell it out, right? Like this, A plus T plus T plus I plus T plus U plus D plus E. Okay. And you said, let's look at the alphabet. The letter A is the first letter in the alphabet. The letter T is the 20th. The letter T is the 20th again. The letter I is the 9th. The letter T is again the 20th. The letter U, 21st. The letter D, the 4th. And the letter E, the 5th. That's 100%. And I don't care if you're speaking English, French, Spanish, German, Dutch, whatever the language is, as long as it uses, you know, the same alphabet here that most of us do in the world, it adds up to 100%. Now, what does that mean? It means that it's our attitude that moves us forward in life and makes things work 100%. It's not necessarily what we know. It's how we feel about what we know and how people feel when we speak to them about what we know, how impassioned we are, how much we believe it. And once again, our attitude towards what we're doing works very, very well. Okay, Keith, next slide. So, you know, if you look at the word money, money's an important word too. But if you look at that and you were to do the same exercise, you only wind up with 72% of your business will revolve around money. 72%, 100% attitude, 72% money. Leadership, another really, really important thing, another really important word. We're going to talk about that a little bit with one of our later speakers. Incredibly important as well. But if you did the same exercise, you know, the L is 12, the E is 5, etc., you wind up with 89% of your business being about leadership. Once again, money's important, leadership's important, but your attitude is 100% determinant on what's going to happen in your life. So that's one thing. Second thing, I get asked all the time, you know, I've done this now for 37 years, by the way, on April 18th. April 18th, 1983, I joined the industry. I was a broke college kid. I was finishing up my university degree at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. And I started in the business and I knew nothing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I went out, I made a little bit of money part-time. I graduated the next month. Some of you know the story. And about 90 days into my business, I went up to Hartford, Connecticut. And the very first time, hopefully you can see this, the very first time I heard about the 10 penny principle, the fellow who was doing the meeting talked about how do you build a business? And, you know, broke college kid, what did I do? I said, I'm going to listen to everything he has to say. I'm going to write down everything he has to say. And I did. And I started to put 10 pennies in my pocket that following Monday morning. And every time that I spoke to somebody about my business, I would take 1 penny out of my left pocket and stick it over in my right pocket. Talk to another person, same thing, left pocket to right pocket. And I do that 10 times a day. And I wound up never having to get a job as a result. I started a distributorship in that company in 1983, and I've done it 5 times since in my career, where I've joined a company with no people and said, all right, where do I start? I start with a basic fundamental thing. And that basic fundamental thing is that I stick 10 pennies in my left pocket and I start talking to people, and an organization all of a sudden starts to develop. People start to come. People start to bring people. So Immunotech was no different. 24 years ago, when I began myself. I joined the company. I was, first guy. I wasn't the first guy to join the company, but I was the first guy in my organization that joined the company. I had 2 people look at the business with me the same day, and both of them decided that they weren't going to get started for whatever reason. But I decided I wanted to because of everything I heard from Dr. Buenos and everything else. But point being, I then had to go and start to employ myself and start to talk to people. And one of the people that I talked to joined. One of the people that I talked to was Wally Kralik, who you all know, for example. One of the people that you know was Dr. Vicky Dominguez. One of the people that you know eventually was Suzette McKay. One of the people that you know was Don Hutchinson. Okay, to just throw out 4 names of people who eventually joined because of that little 10 penny principle of saying every single day, I need to talk to people. Now, if you're doing the business 37 years, do you know you need to talk to people? Well, of course you do. But if you want to start your business over again, okay, and you want to start building a new leg, for example, you start again. So in the last 4 or 5 weeks here, DJ Lou has decided to join Immunotech as a distributor. And he and I right now are teaming up with some people that we both know mutually back in Baltimore and on the East Coast of the United States. And what are we doing? The 10 penny principle, talking to some of those people about Immunotech. So this works. It's very, very simple. It's very duplicatable, most importantly. Okay. Now, if you're new to the business, this is a great exercise and it's going to get you in good habits. If you're stuck in your business is not growing the way that you want it to grow, this is once again a way to get yourself back on track. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to cover today. All of that's, by the way, in Moving Up, so you can read it for yourself if you haven't done so already.
And we've got some great additional stuff coming, John. But once again, hopefully you picked up from John a couple of nuggets that you can use there. Number 1, talk to people. That's it. If you're not talking to people, nothing's going to happen, John. And I know we've got some amazing folks coming on right now. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
Well, we do. And thank you, Keith. And we really do. And, one